Hi, everyone. Welcome to today's webinar entitled Advanced Technology for Data Mining Contracts. My name is Jeff Turner. I'm VP of Sales at Brightleaf Solutions, and I'm going to spend the next 20-25 minutes taking you through some new technology for extracting data out of executed contracts and giving insight into them. So what it is we use software and people to provide a service that gets access to all that key information that's buried away in your executed contracts. And when we talk about all that data, we break it down into kind of four buckets. The first we refer to as metadata. That's information about the contracts, the file name or names if there are companion documents, numbers of pages, specific page numbers, line numbers, etc. We also can extract out of those contracts the terms and conditions, some of the fairly simple stuff like names, dates, dollar amounts, addresses, etc. Going up a level of complexity, we can abstract legal provisions, things like rights of first refusal, whether or not there's a non-compete and what the carve-outs may be. And then we go to what we consider the top of the food chain, which is extracting obligations. And they tend to be kind of tricky because obligations can be found throughout a contract. They're never quite identified as such. They can apply to either party, and they can be time-bound. They may or may not be triggered. They may have penalty clauses, et cetera, et cetera. But we can find all that information and abstract it. And we can get all of this across hundreds and thousands of executed contracts, put it all into a database, and provide it back to you for sorting, searching, filtering, and uploading into enterprise-level systems. So we do it, but we do it really well. Our accuracy level is a minimum of 99.5%, and we have customers that we are contractually obligated to and are delivering at Six Sigma levels, which is 99.99966% accuracy. So when we get the data and deliver it, it's correct. What we can abstract is just about anything. So we work with our clients to say, what do you need to know? And these are some of the types of things we have and could abstract from those documents. We call these attributes. People use different terms for them, but a given data element that falls into any one of those four buckets is what we call an attribute. When we get those attributes, put them in a database, and make them available to our customers, they put them to use in a couple different ways. First off, we have customers that use it to enhance their contract management system. They can take all of their legacy contracts, get the key data out, and load it up into the contract management system, and use it just as they would with their new contracts that they create within the system. A lot of times we see companies implement contract management systems on what we call a day-forward basis, meaning all new contracts go into the system. But it's been so cumbersome, so difficult, and painful to get legacy data in that a lot of companies have ignored it. Our clients also use this data for compliance. Imagine if we could pull all those obligations, all that key data out, make it available to you. You could probably meet those milestones, meet those obligations, execute those contracts much more efficiently and effectively. And that can happen on the sell side. You could do it with your customers, and you could probably do a better job of managing your vendors on the buy side. Our customers use it for analysis. They want to find contracts that have certain characteristics. Often this is triggered by some sort of a change, maybe a merger or acquisition. You want to know what's assignable. You want to know what contracts contain certain levels of risk based on certain attributes. Or very commonly, there's been a change in regulation, and we're dealing with that right now. FASB, the Federal Accounting Standards Board, has updated its lease accounting standards. What constitutes a lease versus a service agreement has changed, and how you account for those leases on your balance sheet versus income statement has changed. So a lot of companies now need to go diving into their leases to find data they never had to find before to determine how to account for it and then provide the information that needs to be accounted for. We have customers taking the data out of their contracts that we provide and finding revenue. We're doing one right now for a client. 25,000 contracts are being abstracted, and they're comparing what we pull out to their invoices. And they know, based on some spot checking, that they're not always invoicing appropriately, especially when some of these contracts go back decades. They believe there are millions of dollars of recoverable revenue to be had based on the abstraction results of these 25,000 contracts. On the buy side, if you know what's in the contracts and can manage them better, you can certainly avoid fees and penalties that your vendors may impose on you, and you can ensure that you're being invoiced correctly. And lastly, our clients have used this data we provide to give back what I call organizational value. When senior executives want to know things about the business, there's actually a lot of information tucked away in those contracts. And you can have better insight into your partners, vendors, and customers by being able to do queries and analysis based on the particular requirements. So those are the use cases, those are the problems we solve when we provide to our clients the data that's in their contracts. We do it first by determining what attributes are important to them. What data is locked away in those contracts that's needed? We take those attributes and put them into a list we call an ontology. And we do this for each client. What one customer may need to know is going to differ from what another customer needs to know. It's not one size fits all. And this is an example of an ontology we created for a client who was going through some of their vendor agreements to pull various data out for analysis and for management of those vendors. And I know this type is kind of small, but if you notice in the lower right-hand corner, it says insurance, and there are about, maybe 10 attributes there? So just something like insurance, we don't just pull the language out of the contract and give that back to you. We can actually parse it out and break it down to levels of granularity like you see here. Is there named coverage for an umbrella? Is there E&O? We, of course, can provide the language, but we can also break it out into some meaningful categories. When we abstract that information using software and people, we now deliver it to our clients one of two ways. We either give it back as a CSV file, and very often that is then uploaded into an enterprise system. But we can push the data right into those enterprise systems as well, like SharePoint, SAP, contract management systems like Mtoris, lease management systems like PropertyWorks, et cetera, et cetera. But most of our customers go for the CSV option for security. If we hand them back a file, they can upload it into whatever system they want to use for managing that data, and they know it's done securely, rather than giving us, an outsider, a connector into their back-end database. But we do offer both options. So how do we do it? We've got software and we've got people. And I want to take the software, what we call our semantic intelligence engine, and tell you a little bit about it, kind of peel back that onion a bit. We put the contracts into our engine, and it first does a three-way extraction. This is the first pass. And it does an extraction by looking at those documents. And it can pull data out based on structure. If there is a form, if there are standard tables, if there's consistency across the documents, we know where we're going to find something like, let's say the termination fee. We always know where to go looking for it. That's rarely the case, because we typically see documents presented to us that are written over years. They're on one party's paper, then another party's paper, so usually a huge degree of variance. So then in come the other ways in which we extract. First off is natural language processing. Our engine understands sentence structure and grammar. It knows what's a date and what's a proper noun, and can actually parse the language appropriately. Next, we tune the engine with rules. So we'll write rules specific to a particular client's requirements. For example, we just did a project with a transportation company. We've never encountered language having to do with mileage and distance and mile markers and things like that. They actually had maps as exhibits on their contracts. So we wrote rules to be able to understand, interpret, and find that information. So after our software goes through a contract, it passing through these three different extraction procedures, we get out chunks of data. If we're looking for a termination date, we'll have a chunk, a block of language. It could be a few words, it could be a sentence, it could be an entire clause, but we get a block of information that has what we're looking for within it. So then we do a second part of the process. Our software then does interpretation. And at this point, we fine-tune those edits. So if we've got the chunk with a termination date in it, we'll now kind of hone in on that date. We'll get just that date. We'll also do normalization. That's a database term for error checking. And we'll do corrections. And we'll also provide consistency. So for example, if what you want is a termination date in the form of 2 digits for the month / 2 digits for the year, 2 digits for the day / 2 digits for the year, we're going to find all different formats across your contracts. We'll convert all of them into the 2-digit, 2-digit, 2-digit format. For example, we find a contract that says the termination date is 18 months from the effective date. We can do that calculation. We may find the next contract says the termination date is, and it's spelled out, March 16th, M-A-R-C-H, 16, comma, the year is spelled out. We'll convert that into the 2 digits, 2 digits, 2-digit format. So there's consistency and a correct approach to the way we'll present the data back to you. Sometimes we have to do this manually, and that's where our people come in. So if our software can't find something, if the software isn't able to do that interpretation, then our people step in and fill in some of those missing pieces. And it's this combination of software that does the heavy lifting, and people that fill in all the stuff that the software can't get, that gives highly, highly accurate results. But we're not done yet. I mean, you just can't get it all out with a machine. It's not always correct. Some of the OCR software that's out there that converts PDFs into machine-readable form will make errors. We place zeros for O's or vice versa. So we go through a quality assurance process where our people will review every single piece of data that we abstract, and they can be in the millions. And we'll make multiple passes of quality assurance. And that's how we get up to that extremely high 99.99966% accuracy. So here's the workflow as to how that engine and that quality assurance fits into the overall flow. We work with our clients to say, show us some sample contracts, tell us what you want to know, tell us how you want it delivered. When it's time to do production, we first need access to their document repository. And that can be done a couple different ways. You can give us VPN access to a server on which you have your files. We can set up a secured FTP site, and you can push your files up to there, copies of them, and we can pull them down, always encrypted end-to-end. And we've even had clients ship us encrypted drives by FedEx. So if the drive gets lost or damaged, nobody's going to be able to read the contents. But once we've got access to your documents, we're ready to feed them into our engine if they're machine readable. Not always, though. In fact, most of the times we find our clients have a combination of documents that are machine readable and documents that are just images. A PDF can be image-based or it can be text-based and therefore machine readable. It depends on how that image was created. If it is a image of a document, not a machine-readable version, we'll perform the OCR, the optical character recognition, and we'll convert it from an image to a machine-readable file before it goes into our engine, and we'll give you those machine-readable files back, so you'll have searchable versions of your contracts if you just have images of some of them. So then they go through our engine. I mentioned the two ways in which it does the extraction, then the interpretation. The data comes out, it goes through our QC, or quality assurance group, multiple times. We then present it back to you for review. And when we first get started, we may only abstract 25 contracts, 50 contracts, and give you the data. Make sure you like it. Make sure we're extracting it exactly the way you want it. Make sure that those 2 digits / 2 digits / 2 digits is what you asked for. And maybe what you really wanted was 2 digits / 2 digits / 4 digits for the termination date. as an example. We'll fix that. We'll adjust it accordingly. And we may go through multiple review cycles using small batches. And when we're ready, then we'll run hundreds or thousands of documents through this process. We'll have milestones where you will do reviews. Usually it's just doing some spot checking, but there is a review process while we're doing the production. And as I indicated earlier, once we're done, we'll either deliver a CSV file or we'll upload the information directly to your system. So let me give you an example of some of that output. We did a project for a company where they wanted us to abstract information from public merger and acquisition filings from the SEC EDGAR site. So that's why I feel comfortable that I can share this data with you. It was actually massive amounts of data they wanted, 851 different attributes pulled from multiple documents. It might be the asset purchase agreement, it might be a companion document, and even the press releases we abstracted from to get some of the information. And what I'm going to show you next is just a sample set of that data. I mean, 851 attributes times hundreds of documents is quite a collection of data. So I'm just going to show you a sample of that right now. And we delivered it to them by pushing it directly into their back-end system. But I put it out as a CSV, and I put some header information on it so that it looks like a spreadsheet, and it's fairly legible here. So you can see some of the attributes. Going down the rows, these are the different documents. So there is a publicly filed set of documents for ABB Limited versus Power One. And we abstracted from that, of course, the deal name. And you can see we've got the acquirer counsel. We've got the target counsel firm, the individuals that are associated with that. We've got the governing law. And I want to point out in some cases there are multiple governing laws. We turned to the client and said, what do you want us to do? And they said, separate them with a colon. We said, great. So that's how we're delivering it back to the client. Notice next it says dollar threshold, yes or no. Now that's an interpreted field. So we went through the contract, we found whether there was a dollar threshold, and if there was a dollar amount, we would put in a yes, and if there wasn't a dollar amount, we'd put in a no. And then we would put in the value if there was one, and then we put in the language. So let's drop down here to row 11. And you can see there was a dollar threshold for this particular deal. It's $12,500,000, and here is the language that covers all that. So I can pull this down. You can see we abstracted the language. So we don't just abstract language. We can parse it out, like you see here with the dollar threshold value. We can interpret it to say yes or no, that there is or isn't a dollar threshold within that set of documents. So I'll continue scrolling across here and show you other examples. Termination fee, yes or no. If it's a yes, what is the fee? And then the actual language. Things like annual insurance premiums. Are there material adverse clauses in there? Lots and lots of yes and no's to determine certain components of these deals. And all of this was provided back to the client so they could then do sorting, searching, filtering, and perform the analysis that they do on M&A documents. I'm going to jump back to my presentation. And we'll open it up to questions in a moment, but I'm just going to point out that if you're intrigued by what you're hearing here, I want to talk about what the next steps could be. So when we talk with clients and they like to get that insight into their contracts, very often we do a demonstration of our technology, show how that engine can do that heavy lifting. We can put some of your contracts into it and do a demo using some of your data, using some of the attributes that are important to you. We could just sit down and assess your contracts, give you a sense of what we would do, how we would approach it, what the time, what the cost is. And we can even do a little bit of a pilot where we would do a test abstraction, pulling the full ontology out of a small number of your contracts as sort of a pilot or often referred to as a proof of concept. So I'm going to stop the recording at this point and open it up to questions.